That's the message Titanic's radio operator, Jack Phillips, taps back to a nearby ship at 11 p.m. on April 14, 1912. The ship trying to reach him is called the Californian, sitting just 20 miles away. Its message: "We are surrounded by ice and stopped for the night." Phillips doesn't have time for it. He's got a backlog of passenger telegrams to clear, rich people sending updates to New York, and this ice warning is jamming his signal. So the Californian's radio operator, Cyril Evans, takes off his headset and goes to bed. 40 minutes later, Titanic hits the iceberg. Everyone knows the name Titanic. Fewer people know it almost didn't sink, and even fewer know exactly how many small human decisions made by tired, proud, ordinary men turned a survivable accident into the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in history. Let's start at the beginning. April 10th, 1912, Southampton, England. The Titanic is the largest moving object ever built by human hands, 269 meters long, weighing 46,000 tons. Newspapers call it unsinkable, though the White Star Line itself never officially uses that word. What they do promise is something more dangerous: a ship divided into 16 watertight compartments, capable of staying afloat even with 4 of them flooded. The math is sound. Nobody accounts for what happens if 5 compartments flood at once. On board is Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line. This is his ship, his company's flagship, his reputation riding across the Atlantic. And Ismay wants speed. He wants Titanic to arrive in New York a day early, to make headlines, to prove this ship is everything they promised. Captain Edward Smith, 62 years old, on his final voyage before retirement, is the most experienced captain in the fleet. He's crossed the Atlantic thousands of times without a serious incident. He knows these waters. He also knows who signs his paycheck. By April 14th, Titanic has already received 6 separate ice warnings from other ships. 6. One from the Coronia in the morning, one from the Baltic at 1:42 p.m, specific enough to include exact coordinates of icebergs and field ice. Smith reads it, shows it to Ismay, who reportedly puts it in his pocket instead of the bridge. Another warning comes from the America, another from the Californian itself, hours before the "shut up" incident. The ship doesn't slow down, not once. Titanic is still moving at 22 knots, near top speed, through a known ice field at night with no moon to reflect off the water and warn the lookouts. Speaking of the lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee are stationed in the crow's nest that night, freezing, straining their eyes into total darkness. Here's a detail most people never hear. Titanic left Southampton without binoculars for the crow's nest. The ones meant for that post are locked in a cabinet, and the officer who had the key was reassigned before departure and left with it still in his pocket. Fleet and Lee are watching the North Atlantic with nothing but their eyes. At 11:39 p.m, Fleet sees it. A shape rising out of the dark, closer than anyone expects. He rings the warning bell 3 times and phones the bridge. "Iceberg! Right ahead!" First Officer William Murdoch has less than 40 seconds to react. He orders the ship hard to port and the engines reversed. It's the textbook response. It's also, historians now argue, the wrong one. A head-on collision at that speed might have crumpled the front compartments, but kept the ship afloat. Instead, the iceberg scrapes along Titanic's starboard side below the waterline, popping rivets and buckling steel plates across 5 compartments, one more than the ship was built to survive. Down in the boiler rooms, crew members feel it, a shudder, not even a hard impact. On the upper decks, passengers barely notice. Some even joke about kicking pieces of ice across the deck. Nobody panics. Nobody has any reason to yet. Thomas Andrews does the math. He's the ship's chief designer, on board for this maiden voyage, and within minutes of the collision, he's calculated it in his head. 5 compartments flooding means the ship's bow will sink low enough for water to pour over the tops of the bulkheads into compartment after compartment, like water spilling over ice cube trays. He tells Captain Smith directly, Titanic has at most 2 hours left. Now the real disaster begins, and it's not the iceberg. It's the lifeboats. Titanic carries 20 lifeboats, enough for barely half the 2,224 people on board. Not because of a shortage of space on deck, because of an outdated regulation that calculated lifeboat requirements by a ship's tonnage, not its passenger count. A rule written decades before ships this size existed. White Star Line actually installed fewer boats than the design allowed, worried too many boats would clutter the deck and unsettle first-class passengers who wanted an unobstructed ocean view. Crew members begin loading boats around 12:20 a.m. and here's where confusion turns fatal. Many of the crew have never run a lifeboat drill. Officers, unsure how many people the boats can safely hold, begin lowering them half empty. Lifeboat 1 leaves with just 12 people in a boat built for 40. Lifeboat 7, the first one launched, carries 28 out of a possible 65. On the horizon, Second Officer Herbert Stone, aboard the Californian, watches white flares shoot into the sky from a ship in the distance. He reports it to Captain Stanley Lord, who is resting in the chart room. Lord, half asleep, tells him to keep signalling with the Morse lamp and doesn't come up to look himself. Stone watches 8 distress rockets fired over the next hour. 8. He never wakes his captain a second time. Back on Titanic, the band, led by violinist Wallace Hartley, keeps playing on deck. Ragtime tunes at first, meant to keep passengers calm and moving towards the boats. Isidore Strauss, co-owner of Macy's department store, is offered a seat in a lifeboat because of his age. He refuses to go before other men. His wife Ida refuses to leave without him. She gives her fur coat to her maid instead and says, "We have lived together for many years. Where you go, I go." Their last scene sitting together on deck chairs, holding hands. By 2 a.m, the last lifeboats are gone. Over 1,500 people remain on a ship with less than 20 minutes left. Captain Smith is seen walking towards the bridge alone. The stern of the ship rises out of the water as the bow fills, and passengers who haven't jumped begin sliding, falling, screaming down the tilted decks. At 2:20 a.m, Titanic breaks in half between the 3rd and 4th funnels and disappears beneath the surface. The water temperature that night is -2 degrees Celsius, cold enough to kill in 15 minutes. Of the roughly 1,500 people in the water, only 13 are pulled out alive by the lifeboats nearby, boats that had room for hundreds more, but whose crews were too afraid of being swamped to go back. One boat does return. 5th Officer Harold Lowe rows back into the wreckage and pulls 4 people from the freezing water. He's the only officer who does. RMS Carpathia, 58 miles away, receives the distress call almost by accident. Its radio operator happened to still have his headset on that late and races through the same ice field at full speed, arriving just before dawn. She pulls 705 survivors from the lifeboats. Nobody left in the water is still alive by then. Bruce Ismay survives, climbing into one of the last lifeboats launched. For the rest of his life, newspapers call him the coward of the Titanic. Captain Smith goes down with his ship, exactly as tradition demanded of him. Thomas Andrews, the man who calculated the 2-hour countdown, is last seen standing alone in the first-class smoking room, staring at a painting, making no attempt to save himself. 2 inquiries follow, one American, one British. Both conclude the same thing: not enough lifeboats, ice warnings ignored, and a nearby ship that could have saved hundreds and never came. Within months, international maritime law changes forever. Every ship must now carry enough lifeboats for every person aboard. Every passenger ship must maintain 24-hour radio watch. Neither of those rules existed the night Titanic sank.